3 days before my 70th birthday. My daughter looked me square in the eyes and said something I will never forget. You won't even remember signing it. Dad, by Monday morning, I had lost power of attorney over my entire estate. My accounts were locked. And nearly $25 million in real estate, biotech shares, and intellectual property was slipping out of my hands. I'm Dr. Charles Langford, 68 years old. I founded Langford Biotech from a lab in my garage, grew it into a Fortune 500 company, and sold it just after my wife passed. I'm not a man who scares easily, but that morning, I felt something I hadn't felt since medical school panic. If you've ever been blindsided by family greed, drop your city in the comments and subscribe, because what I'm about to share isn't just betrayal. It's betrayal that was dressed up to look like love. It wasn't always like this. I gave everything to that family. Every birthday, every holiday, every late-night boardroom call I took instead of tucking Heather in. I was trying to secure her future. Turns out, she wasn't waiting for it. She was planning to take it. Let me back up. After I sold the company for just under $200 million, I downsized, moved out of the brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, gave up 3 of my 5 vintage cars, and kept just enough a 2-bedroom condo in Manhattan, a yacht I rarely used, and an investment portfolio I barely touched. Heather, my only daughter, was 29 then. I'd made her VP of marketing by 27. She had a trust fund, a Range Rover, a 2-bedroom loft in Soho. She married a startup guy named Alex, lots of buzz. No business model. They moved into my guest house in the Hamptons last year. Heather said she wanted to be closer to family. Said it would help me feel less alone. That part, it worked. I started inviting them to brunch. I let them handle some of my mail. I even gave Heather limited access to my Fidelity account to help me monitor returns. I wasn't being foolish. I was being hopeful. Hopeful that, after decades of sacrifice, my family might finally just want to be with me, not what I could give them. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. Heather started asking about medical directives just in case. Alex mentioned how complicated taxes must be for someone your age. They kept bringing up that stroke I had the previous fall, mild, controlled, and fully recovered from. Every time I brought up travel or downsizing further, Heather would say, "You've done enough. Dad, let us carry the weight now." What I didn't realize was, they weren't planning to carry the weight. They were planning to carry the assets straight into their names. The day before the party, I got a strange email from Chase. Your power of attorney status has been updated. Updated, I hadn't touched that in years. When I logged in, I saw Heather's name listed beside mine with full access. There was a signature next to it, my signature. Except, I hadn't signed anything. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to believe it, but I printed that form. I slid it into my drawer. And that night, for the first time in months, I locked the door to my bedroom. The next morning, I poured my coffee slower than usual. I sat in the breakfast nook, same one I'd built for my wife 35 years ago, and just listened. Heather was laughing on the patio with Alex, talking about hiring a decorator for the guest house. She sounded happy, but now that I knew what to look for, something in that laughter felt wrong. It wasn't joy. It was victory. I tried to remember when the shift happened. When did I stop being her father and become her target? It probably started the day I signed her college tuition check. University of Southern California. Out of state. Full ride from Dad. From there, it snowballed apartment in Los Angeles. Emergency credit card. Unpaid internships she couldn't afford on her own. Meanwhile, I was running clinical trials across 2 continents, sleeping on planes, skipping Christmas 3 years in a row because someone's insulin data failed replication. When her wedding came around, I offered $50,000, Heather said it wasn't enough for Napa, so I gave her $250,000 instead. That paid for the vineyard rental, designer dress, fireworks show, and even Alex's family's flights. They didn't offer a dime. I didn't complain. I figured, what's money? Compared to having my daughter smile and call me the best dad in the world, the honeymoon photos looked like they belonged in a travel magazine. Heather tagged me in one post. Thanks to my forever hero for making this dream come true. Looking back now, that post was the last genuine thing she ever wrote about me. A few years later, she joined my company, VP of Marketing, straight out of a barely finished MBA. My COO pulled me aside and said, "Charles, we've got real candidates for this." But I insisted. I thought I was helping her. I thought maybe if she saw what I built, she'd understand the cost of building it. Instead, she used her title to boost Alex's failing app startup. She hosted mixers at our company events, told investors to trust the Langfords. I was cleaning up the mess behind the scenes NDAs, compliance issues, HR complaints. Still, I kept saying yes, because that's what you do for your children. Right. You cover the overdraft. You stay quiet when the report's missing. You tell yourself love is unconditional, even when it's only flowing one way. But what I didn't see then was this. Heather didn't want to build something of her own. She wanted mine. She didn't just want the lifestyle. She wanted the legacy with her name on the plaque. Alex saw it, too. That's why he played the long game. It started calling me dad a little too quickly. Started picking up dry cleaning without being asked. Started asking questions about what would happen if you ever got too sick to manage things yourself. The truth is, I wasn't sick. I was just slowing down. After 50 years of grind, you don't sprint anymore. You coast. But in my quiet, they saw opportunity. After I sold the company, I moved my accounts to a private wealth firm, Fidelity, Morgan Stanley, and a few offshore trusts. I'd built layers of protection. What I didn't account for was the people I trusted the most being the ones to dig under those layers. It started small. Alex said he could streamline my portfolio logins into one dashboard. Heather wanted access to my medical records, just in case there was ever an emergency. She even asked to be listed on my life insurance beneficiary update just so it's already handled. I gave them both access to my calendar. I let them help with prescription refills. Heather offered to take over my tax prep. All little things. Each one felt harmless. But if you line them up now, you can see it. They were building a case. Constructing a narrative. A slow drip of dad's not what he used to be. And to the outside world, it worked. Neighbors told me I was lucky to have such attentive children. My accountant said Heather seemed very on top of things. Even my own doctor once said, "You raised a smart girl." Charles. Yeah. Smart enough to fake my signature. Smart enough to poison my drink. Smart enough to nearly pull it off. You know how betrayal feels. It doesn't come crashing through the front door. It seeps in quietly, like a leak under the floorboards. You don't notice it until everything's rotting. That's how it hit me. I was sitting in my study, just 2 days before the party, reviewing some market briefs, something I hadn't done in months. That's when I saw it. A second email from Chase. New external account added for authorized transfers. It wasn't mine. I clicked into the dashboard and stared at the screen. The new user profile read Heather Langford, financial co-agent. Power of attorney active. Not pending. Not proposed. Active. I didn't remember signing anything. The form was already uploaded, PDF. Timestamps. Digital signature. My name typed in all the right places. Except I knew my signature. That wasn't it. My stomach dropped. I went into the safe. The real POA, the original, signed 5 years ago, was gone. Then came the second punch. On my health insurance portal, I noticed a new form had been uploaded 3 weeks earlier. Consent for cognitive evaluation. Signed by me. Except again, I hadn't signed a damn thing. The document claimed I'd agreed to undergo a mental capacity assessment, filed through a private practice, linked to an old name I hadn't heard in years, Dr. Perry Nelson. Back in college, Perry and I were roommates. He went into psychiatry. I went into pharmaceuticals. We hadn't spoken in over a decade, and yet there was his signature, listed as the assigned evaluator. It was starting to make sense. The stroke last fall. The way Heather kept reminding people about it. The way Alex kept bringing up my forgetfulness. They were planting seeds. The missing POA. The forged documents. The backdoor account access. They weren't just talking about conservatorship anymore. They were actively building it. I didn't panic. Not yet. I went back to something I installed during the pandemic, my Ring security system. I pulled up the archive. There it was. Exactly 1 week earlier. Tuesday morning. 11:17 a.m. Alex. Entering my house using the back gate. He walks in through the side door, uses the code I gave him when we were remodeling the deck. 23 minutes later, he leaves with a manila envelope tucked under his arm. I zoomed in on the feed. Frame by frame. Clear as day. That envelope was from my filing cabinet. It held all my original estate paperwork. I watched the footage twice. Then a third time. That's when the fear stopped. And the anger started. They weren't guessing. They weren't wondering. They were executing. Heather's concern wasn't concern. It was strategy. Alex's helpfulness wasn't kindness. It was logistics. They were preparing to legally erase me and cash out before I even realized I'd disappeared. I needed help. So I picked up the phone and called Zoe. Zoe wasn't just my neighbor, she was my former legal assistant. Sharp. No nonsense. The kind of woman who could smell a forged signature from a mile away. I told her everything. The emails. The missing documents. The medical form. The Ring footage. She didn't interrupt once. But when I finished, she said 2 words. They're close. She meant the filing. The legal move. They were probably waiting for the party. My 70th birthday would be the perfect stage full of guests. Cameras. Speeches. If I stumbled or said something confusing on live stream, that would be all the evidence they'd need. Zoe said. They're counting on the optics. If you act confused or agitated in front of witnesses, they can file for emergency guardianship Monday morning. They already have the affidavits. I guarantee it. I sat there in silence. The Ring footage still playing behind me. Looping. Heather hugging me at brunch. Alex handing me my coffee every morning. The little smiles. The concerned glances. It wasn't love. It was leverage. This wasn't just about access. This was about control. The day of the party. I woke up before the sun. I made myself a quiet cup of tea. Sat in my robe. And stared out over the garden. The landscapers had already come through. The hedges were trimmed. The white tent was up. String lights wound around the pergola like it was some kind of fairy tale. It looked beautiful. Peaceful. But I knew better. Today wasn't a celebration. It was a setup. My 70th birthday. 80 confirmed guests. Former colleagues. Neighbors. Even my old COO from Langford Biotech. Heather had planned everything. She booked a caterer from Manhattan. Hired a string quartet. Brought in a videographer. She said it was to preserve memories. I knew it was to capture footage. Footage of what of me declining. Of me slurring a toast. Forgetting a name. Of me looking unstable. I played along. I smiled when Heather handed me a brand new linen suit. I thanked Alex when he offered to hold on to my phone for the day. I posed for photos. Shook hands. Sipped sparkling water instead of champagne. And I watched. Watched everyone. At 6 o'clock. I noticed movement by the bar. Alex again. This time, He was holding a whiskey bottle, my favorite one. The one with my initials engraved into the glass. That bottle was a gift from my late wife. I don't touch it unless it's a special occasion. Apparently, they thought this was special enough. I watched him pour a glass. Then his hand dipped into his jacket pocket. It happened fast. Subtle. Barely a flick of the wrist. But I saw it. A tiny paper sleeve. Torn. Emptied into the drink. He placed the glass on a silver tray and told the server, "This one's for my father-in-law. His favorite." I excused myself calmly. In the bathroom, I poured the entire drink into a sterile container I kept for medications. I rinsed the glass, washed my hands, looked in the mirror, and smiled, because that was their mistake. They thought I was alone, but I had already sent Zoe the ring footage. I had copies of the forged POA and the Chase logins. I even had screenshots of Heather emailing Dr. Perry Nelson from my private account. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was criminal. Back in my study, I opened my file drawer. As expected, empty. No original documents. No titles. No medical paperwork. But Alex had left his laptop on the desk. Unlocked. The moment I touched the trackpad, the screen blinked awake. There they were. A fresh conservatorship petition. Already filled out. A new power of attorney form dated that morning, digitally signed on-site. A medical affidavit claiming I exhibited signs of early dementia. Signed by Dr. Nelson. They weren't planning to wait until Monday. They were filing the next morning. And the footage from tonight, the speech. The toast. The episode would be their nail in the coffin. All of it. Perfectly timed. That's when it all connected. Layer 1. The performance. The public incident. My confusion. Documented on camera. Layer 2. The medical affidavit. My former friend Perry declaring me mentally unfit. Layer 3. The legal structure. The POA swap. The trust transfers. The new bank accounts. It was airtight. Except for one thing. They still underestimated me. I backed away from the laptop and started planning my move. The guests were gathering for the toast. Heather tapped the mic. Alex cued the live stream. The quartet fell silent. I stepped outside to applause. Raised an empty glass. And looked directly into the camera. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It means more than you know. Heather stood beside me. Alex handed her the whiskey glass he thought was drugged. She smiled and raised it toward me. I looked right at her. To family, I said, and then I waited. Heather took a slow sip of her whiskey. The very glass Alex had prepared. I watched her carefully. She paused mid-sentence. Blinked. Then laughed nervously and whispered something to Alex. He leaned in. Nodded. And looked straight at me. He knew. Something wasn't right. Because I hadn't drunk the whiskey. Heather had, and Alex was starting to realize that the trap they set had just snapped shut on the wrong person. I held my smile. Lifted my untouched champagne. To family. I repeated. Applause. Laughter. A few guests clinked glasses. But I wasn't listening anymore. My focus was already shifting. Heather's expression started to tighten. Her shoulders sank slightly. Alex reached for her arm, and I walked away quietly. Calmly, straight back to my study. That's where the war room began. See, I hadn't just prepared for a confrontation. I had built an entire counteroffensive. First, call my attorney. Grant Whitmore. I'd worked with him for 2 decades. He didn't blink when I told him the situation. Second, Zoe. She was already on the way. Carrying everything I'd sent her: documents, footage, login history, screenshots. Third, a forensic accountant. Retired IRS. Known for cracking white-collar fraud across 3 states. He owed me a favor. I called it in. Within the hour. We had a file thick enough to choke a judge. We started with the forged POA. Zoe matched my signature on the new form to a scanned mortgage from 10 years ago. 2 different slants. Different pressure point. One was mine. The other wasn't even close. Then we compared timestamps on the updated bank login logs to the Ring camera feed. Turns out, Heather had logged into my Chase account from a device in Soho at the exact same time Alex was at my house, stealing my documents. That alone violated 3 separate state fraud statutes. But it didn't stop there. My forensic guy flagged 6 suspicious transfers, small, under the radar, each one routed from my trust account into a shell LLC Alex had set up, disguised as a digital media consultancy. The total $243,780, siphoned off in 14 months. They were bleeding me dry, one transaction at a time. Meanwhile, Zoe had called in a lab tech from her old firm to test the whiskey sample. Result positive for a high-dose benzodiazepine. Not your over-the-counter type. This was prescription-grade sedative, enough to knock out a full-grown man in under 20 minutes. The sample came back marked lorazepam, which meant, if I'd taken that drink and then stumbled during my birthday toast, I would have looked confused, disoriented, just the way they wanted. Heather and Alex would have filed the petition the next morning, with a psychiatrist's affidavit, live stream footage, and a room full of witnesses who saw me acting off. The plan was airtight, until I flipped it. By midnight, Grant had filed an emergency injunction with the New York Elder Court. We cited Statute 42.07, abuse of legal guardianship authority for financial gain. That injunction froze every account tied to the forged POA, my bank accounts, the trust portfolio, even the Fidelity holdings. Next, we triggered title holds on both the Hamptons guest house and Heather's Soho condo. Temporary blocks, but enough to force a court review. Then came the silent strikes. Grant sent certified letters to every institution I was connected to Fidelity. Morgan Stanley, my health insurer, even my prescription provider. Each one stated the POA was revoked and under investigation. Each one included documentation. By dawn, Heather and Alex's access was gone. No more logins. No more transfers. No more control. They were locked out. And I wasn't done. The next day, I walked into my private bank with Zoe and Grant. We restructured the trusts, moved the core portfolio into a new LLC in my name. With Zoe as emergency proxy, the yacht transferred to the Charles Langford Foundation. Irrevocable. Non-taxable. No longer theirs to touch. The condo in Manhattan, retitled to a holding company only. I had the key. I watched as Heather tried calling me 12 times. Then Alex texted, "Can we talk? This is all a huge misunderstanding." Right. But misunderstandings don't require forged signatures and sedatives. This wasn't a family argument. It was an ambush. And they failed. By the end of that week, everything changed. The first to fold was Heather. I expected tears, or maybe even anger. But all I got was a flat, almost rehearsed apology. She called, voice shaking, insisting she never meant for it to go so far. She claimed Alex had pressured her. Claimed the bank forms were just for simplifying things. Said the whiskey was just to help you relax at your own party. Dad. But the evidence didn't care about anyone's story. The judge read the forensic reports in court. The medical toxicology. The bank transfers. The ring footage played for the room Alex, sneaking through my study. That manila envelope in his hand. Heather's attorney dropped her as a client within 2 days of that hearing. She tried to get a continuance. Said she needed time to gather herself. But the court refused. Alex's situation crumbled even faster. His so-called digital consultancy was exposed as a front for laundering the stolen funds. His own business partners walked out on him the morning the story hit LinkedIn. Nobody wants to be caught in a storm of elder abuse and financial fraud. Dr. Perry Nelson, the psychiatrist who'd signed those affidavits, his career ended before lunch, the day after the story broke. Medical board stripped his license permanently. Decades of reputation. Gone in one afternoon. The court's decision was swift. All my accounts were fully restored. The fake power of attorney and forged medical directives were voided on the spot. Both the Hamptons guest house and Heather's Soho condo were put under a court hold pending investigation. Every last transfer over $243,000 was clawed back. Alex was ordered to pay restitution. Heather received a court mandate to attend fraud counseling and was barred from managing or accessing any of my affairs for 5 years. But even after all that, the real blow came from the public fallout. The local news ran the story for a week straight. Retired biotech founder foils multi-million-dollar family fraud. The headline said. Suddenly, friends and former colleagues were reaching out, some to congratulate me, some to ask if I was all right. A few, heartbreakingly, shared that they'd gone through something similar but had never been able to prove it. At home, things were quieter. The phone stopped ringing. No more surprise brunches. No more Heather asking about my health or Alex volunteering to run errands. Even my neighbors, who'd once praised how devoted my family seemed, began to look at me differently. With respect, with a little pity. Maybe. But I'll take respect over manipulation any day. One afternoon, just as the trees turned orange and the air cooled, Heather showed up at my door. She was crying. Or at least, trying to. She asked if I would just hear her out. Said she'd made a mistake. Said she was just scared of losing everything. I let her talk. But when she asked if I would forgive her if she could be part of my life again, or maybe just help with the estate, I looked her right in the eyes. You didn't just try to steal money, I said quietly. You tried to erase me. Heather, you tried to convince the world I couldn't be trusted with my own life. That kind of betrayal doesn't just heal because you say sorry. She reached for a hug. I took a step back. It was over. I chose dignity over reconciliation. The law took care of the rest. By the following month, Alex had moved out of state. Heather was living with her mother, working an entry-level sales job. The guest house was empty. My home was silent, but for the first time in years, it actually felt like mine. Justice, when it comes, is quieter than you'd expect. But it's thorough. 6 months later, my world is quieter but stronger. I moved to Sarasota, Florida, bought a small place by the water, and started volunteering at an elder rights nonprofit. Every week, I teach folks how to spot warning signs, protect their accounts, and trust their instincts. Zoe visits most Sundays. Grant calls to check in. I've found a circle that feels like family by choice, not by blood. Sometimes I still see that whiskey bottle on my shelf, the one Alex tampered with. It reminds me that boundaries are stronger than betrayal. If you were in my shoes, would you have pressed charges or just walked away? Let me know in the comments. And if you took something from this story, subscribe and protect your peace. Not every villain wears a mask. Sometimes they wear your last name.